Hey there, Wargamers, Justin the Arm Painter here from Death Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to do a scorched barrel effect on your weapons, which are perfect for Space Marine assault cannons, or if you happen to want to scorch up some of your Xenos filth weapons, that'll work too.
For today's tutorial, we're going to be working with a Space Marine assault cannon. I'll show you how to do the scorched barrels here on the tip. If you're interested in how we got the particular piece here in its current state, please check out our previous tutorial where I cover dry brushing and dry brushing metallics. For today's tutorial, we're going to need a couple of paints here, starting out with Brass Monkey for Minotaur, as well as Ghost Tint Purple, followed up by some Ghost Tint Blue. In addition to that, we're going to be using some Snow White. From Citadel Line, we're going to be using some Nuln Oil Wash here, and finally a little bit of Longbeard Gray Technical Dry Brush Paint. Before we can start applying the paints though, we need to prep this piece with a little bit of masking to cover up the areas that we don't want to get hit with the airbrush. So I'm going to come in here with my Tamiya masking tape and do the best I can to cover up all the areas we don't want to be covered, and when you're doing this, don't worry too much because you can always come back in later and touch up the areas that you messed up, and in this case they're really easy to touch up because the color that we're trying to protect is black. Alright, so with our masking now applied, it's time to come in with our Brass Monkey. Now we're going to be targeting about 2/3 or 60%-ish of the barrel here. We're going to cover the whole surface with this Brass Monkey and get a nice tarnished look. As with all airbrushing, make sure you go slow, apply multiple thin coats if necessary, and remember that with this Brass Monkey color going on, it is kind of translucent. Spraying it over the silver is a really nice effect. But if you do multiple layers, you're going to increase the intensity of the brass color and you're going to lose some of that silver metallic that kind of shows through. So be aware when you're doing multiple coats that the color overall may change. So go slow and stop when you feel like you've got a transition of color that you really like. One other thing to notice that by mounting our bit on a stick like this, or a toothpick, or a shish kebab skewer or something like that, you're able to rotate the miniature and get all the angles of the barrels really easily, and that makes painting this effect a lot easier than doing it once it's on the model. With our brass now applied, we can come in with the next color here, which will be Minotaur Snow White. Now we're going to be focusing on the front edge of the barrels here, about halfway between where the brass is that we laid down and the tip here. So essentially we're creating a gradient. So we've got silver into brass and brass into white. Just like when we're applying the brass, apply multiple thin coats here of the white until you get an intensity on the tip that you like. Now this may seem counterintuitive what we're doing here, but essentially the purple and blue ghost tints that we're going to be using are translucent paints. So when we move on to the next step, when we apply those over the brass and the white, we're going to get a different transition of color simply by having the layers underneath different. So right now we're kind of working with the same principles that you would with pre-shading. With our brass and white now applied, we can move on to the next step. Now as I said before, we applied this way because the next paints we're going to be working with are translucent, so bear with me, all the colors are really going to come together here. Next up, we're going to be using Ghost Tint Purple from Minotaur. With our Ghost Tint Purple here, we're going to come in and we're going to spray kind of right here where the brass and the white meets. We don't want to spray where the silver and the brass meets because we want that transition from silver to brass, brass into purple, and where the purple covers the brass and the white, we're going to get this different tarnished purple and a brighter purple. But don't cover the whole area. Again, you want that silver transition into brass, brass into purple, and then the purple transitioning from a darkish purple to a lighter purple, and then leave that white on the tip where we'll be able to have some blue meeting the purple and then blue meeting the white. With our Ghost Tint Purple now applied, it's time to come in with our Ghost Tint Blue. Now remember, when we apply this blue, we want to be focusing here on the tip. We want to preserve this transition of brass into purple here, and purple transitioning into blue, and then the blue fading into the bright white on the tip. Just like we did in the previous airbrush steps, we're going to come in here with multiple thin coats and passes. We want to make sure we're spraying right up next to the purple, so we get that transition from purple to dark blue right there where they meet, and then from that into the white where the blue becomes brighter. Given the nature of these ghost tint paints, I'd like to reiterate the fact that you do not want to spray one area too heavily for too long, and you don't want to do too many passes or too many coats. Again, if you do that, you're going to lose some of the intensity of the color. As you can see here, I'm spraying down another coat of blue, and it's going from a kind of pale blue to a darker blue, which is what we want. But if you keep doing that, it's going to start to get darker and darker and darker, and you're going to lose that transition from brass to purple to blue to light blue, which we want that because we want the tips of the barrels to look like they've gotten hot. With our ghost tint layers now dry, we can come in here and peel off our masking. Remember, when we do this, if there are any areas that got messed up or any areas that we did not quite get the masking on perfectly, you can come back in with some black paint and fix that later. In its current state, you could stop here. This piece is perfectly acceptable for tabletop or tabletop plus standard. However, given the nature of the ghost tints here that we've applied to the barrel, they tend to bleed if they get wet. So we are going to come in with another step here, and we're going to apply a matte varnish to seal this up. With our matte varnish now dry, you can see there's some areas here that were inevitable where we had some overspray. So we're going to come in with some black paint and just do a quick little touch up on the bar here, come back around, and just black out the areas that we did not want to actually be scorched metal. With our black areas now touched up, it's time to come in with our Longbeard Gray. We're going to be working in a dry brush here, focusing specifically on the tip here in a downward motion, trying to catch the edges of all of our barrels and the front of the black kind of casing or binding that holds it all together. I find that doing this last little step with the dry brush here on the barrels kind of gives it a ash or white hot look, which I think really pulls everything together. And as a added side effect here, we're actually going to be able to hit some of the areas we had to touch up with the black and put the gray edge highlight back on those as well. For our final step here, we're going to be coming in with some Nuln Oil, and I've mixed our Nuln Oil 3 parts wash to 1 part gloss varnish, and the idea is we are going to focus on the recesses between each of the barrels here. And because we matte varnished it, we lost some of the sheen, so this little bit of gloss is going to give a little sheen back to the barrels, which is nice, but also it's going to add a really nice dark recess between each barrel, and it's going to help define the piece. Where the scorched areas, the purples, the bronzes, and so forth we put on look really good, it almost takes away some of the depth. So by doing this, we're going to bring that depth back and complete the piece. Alright, with our wash applied, this is ready for the tabletop. It's important to note, though, that you may not like mixing the Nuln Oil with gloss. If that is the case, you could come in with just standard Nuln Oil and focus on all these recesses as well. It just depends on what effect you would like and what sheen you think would look good on your miniature. Really experiment with this, play around, and have some fun.
Alright, with our matte varnish and wash now dry, I think we're going to call this piece complete. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ding the little bell so you get alerts when we put up new content. And as always, if you have any feedback for us, any techniques you'd like to see us work on, or miniatures you'd like to see us paint, make sure you sound off in the comments below. I do love interacting with you guys, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. If you utilize these techniques on any of your miniatures, they don't just have to be Space Marines. If you happen to put them on Xenos or even a different game completely, that's perfectly fine. We would love to see what you come up with, though. So make sure you check out our Facebook group, the TAP Garrison, where you can share your photos with us, all the members of the DRD team, as well as people from our community. We'd love to interact with you and sharing your hobby goodness. If you happen to not use Facebook and you'd like to share with us, make sure if you happen to use Instagram, you tag us on there. That's a good place for us to check out your images as well. And if you'd like to help support the channel, make sure you check out deathredesigns.com. Anything you do there helps keep the lights on, helps keep me employed so I can continue to produce content for you guys, which I love to do. As always, folks, happy wargaming, keep painting, and I'll see you in the next video.